Welcome to our YouTube channel. That sounds so weird. We are really excited about today's video because it's about the pros and cons of living in Texas. Honestly, God has been so good to us that I really do feel like there's more pros than cons, and I came up with cons just because I had to come up with some. But we wish to share this story with you guys. We wish to share our lives with you guys. Whenever David and I were looking for videos of couples that had moved from New York City to Texas, I rarely found any. And there was just one guy that he was able to give us like a rundown of what does it feel like to actually come from a big city. I think he came from like Queens, which is a borough in New York City, to Texas. I think he moved to like Austin, and he was amazing. He shared so much information. But since then, we've learned so much about ourselves and about this journey that we really wanted to share with people and share with, just share with people. So today's video is about pros and cons of living in Texas. So let's start with the pros. One of the pros that I found from moving from New York City to Texas is that you get a fresh start. It's like a canvas and you get to paint whatever you want on it. David and I were so used to living in New York City, so we didn't really have much to learn. We knew what life there was like. We had our lives pretty planned out. He was in the fire department of New York City. I used to work for the Department of Education. And so we kind of saw where our lives were going, where we would live, where we would buy a house. So our dreams were pretty settled. But when we came to Texas, we started just thinking of things that we would have never even thought of. I mean, we explored from like flipping a house and renovating like floors and we were city people, so we weren't rugged at all. We didn't know how to do any of these things, and we learned to do them, to like buying land and building your own house. When in New York, you're kind of more like, I will buy my house and it has already been built, so you don't really think of these things, or at least we didn't. So that would be one of the major pros of coming from New York City to Texas for us, that we were able to redream everything. Like, it's like nothing was off limits, and God has been so good to us because he has expanded our imagination and we're able to think of things that we would have never thought of. So if I had to pick a pro, and it would be my number one, it would be we get a fresh start. It's almost like a blank canvas, but I said that before. The second thing I think is a pro from coming from a big city to a small city would be the fact that the people are so hospitable and so loving. My husband and I are both Christians. And we find that people here are so loving, so hospitable, so welcoming. They truly care about you. They welcome you into their homes easily. Like in New York City, Dave and I were a little antisocial. Not antisocial, but yeah, antisocial. We were very to ourselves. Yes, we used to socialize with the people at our church and we used to hang out and everything, but we lived in the same apartment for 5 years and I think we never said hi to our neighbors. So it's not that we were trying to be antisocial, but and this is not for everybody, but I'm just speaking on our experience. We just lived a very fast-paced life. So because we lived a fast-paced life, we didn't really have time to like sit down and talk for like an hour with our neighbors. Here, like you can be walking, going like on a neighborhood walk, and I kid you not, your neighbor will stop you and you will speak for about an hour. So I think that goes into my fourth point. Is it my fourth point? No, my third point. Slow living, quality of life, and space. So that's like 3 in 1. In Texas, you get to live this, or at least in the part of Texas that I am, we get to live like this country lifestyle that is so slow. People here are not in a rush. You get to like catch your breath. Like mornings here are so glorious. You wake up, you make your coffee or your tea if that's your thing. You enjoy each other more. Like David and I's marriage is just so much more richer and fuller because we get to spend time with each other. When we were in New York City, we were like in a rat race. It was like, and honestly, it felt like we were on a little hamster wheel where we were like running and never really getting anywhere. And that was one of the things that we really liked when we got to Texas. Our lives get to be so planned out. Like him and I have, you know, weekly meetings about like what we're gonna do for the week or what we're expecting for the week, and we get to like do life together, like really do life together. My fourth point would be cost of living. Lord, it is so cheap to live in Texas. In comparison to New York City, it is so cheap to live in Texas. Like, and I mean, rent of like $700 versus rent of $1,400, $1,600, $2,400. I have friends in New York City that pay $3,300 of rent alone. In Texas, cost of living is much lower. Gas is lower. Milk is lower. Eggs is lower. Just your groceries are lower. You know, everything is just so much more inexpensive than it would be in New York City. And that's one of the things that really drove us to move to Texas. Cost of living is so low. So because cost of living is so low, you get to like dream more and you get to execute those dreams because most of your income is not going into trying to survive. So that was one of the things that we really enjoyed. I remember when David and I went to Walmart and we bought like a gallon of milk when I used to drink milk. And it was like $1.89 versus in New York City, it's been like $4 for a gallon of milk. I know it's weird that I'm talking about milk, but at the same time, these were real concerns for us. So we're thankful that we get to be here because God just knew to lead us to this place because it's just so much better for us. It's been such a positive experience for both my husband and I. All right, the next thing is that I think is a pro is you can start your own business. When David and I got here, we had an Etsy shop, and we had friends that they had an Etsy shop as well, and we were family planning, and we were thinking, you know, we live in a new town, we don't have family members here, so it would be better if I stay home and don't have to hire a nanny, and I'm able to have like my own small business so that, you know, we can have children and I can stay home. And so, though I truly believe God can provide a nanny that is amazing, but for me, my heart's desire was to stay home with children, though we don't have any right now. So we started like getting into this thing of like learning what it would cost to have a business here. We also wanted to be able to plan out our finances so that we can be able to stay home with children, which I said that 5 times. I'm sorry for repeating myself. And so, yeah, you can start your own business. You have so much more time in your hands. Therefore, you can think wilder thoughts. So for us, we started various Etsy shops as I was kind of like learning the ropes of Etsy and learning like what would be the best thing for me to do in Etsy. And so we started an Etsy shop, and right now it's not open yet. We want to be ready to ship. And so that is why we haven't opened it yet, but it should be opening in the next 2 weeks. And we will share everything below. We will link everything below in case you want to see it. And so right now, that has been such a huge pro for me because I've always wanted to work for myself, except that in New York City, I never really thought of how that would work, though I'm positive there's a bunch of people that have Etsy shops in New York. But for me, I just never thought it was a possibility till I got here. I had like more brain space to think about these things and think if it was something that I really wanted to do. Plus a lot of prayer went into it. So yeah, that's, I think that's my last pro. Cons, I have 3. I came up with 3. The first con for me would be making friends. So as an adult, I didn't know how much harder it would be to make friends. Granted, I have so many friends in New York City, and those relationships will always be with me. But building brand new relationships was difficult because of the trust factor. You don't know people. Though God has been super gracious to me and super tender, I have really good friends here that take me out for my birthday, just spend time with me, talk to me. When you first move to Texas from such a huge city and you leave all of your family behind, it's difficult. It can be an adjustment. And so for me, it was definitely an adjustment. I had to kind of deal with the sadness of not having my mom 15 minutes away. I think one of the verses that really stuck with me was Proverbs 17:17, and it said, "A friend loves at all times." And that was a lot of comfort for me because I was able to say, my friendships that I have in New York City, they will remain with me for the rest of my life. And if they're really true friendships, then they're gonna love me at all times, and I'm gonna love them at all times. And those relationships in New York City didn't dissipate. They became even stronger because now we had to be intentional about contacting each other. And then the friendships that I had here, I was able to take my time and getting to know people, and still am taking my time to know them and build meaningful friendships that will hopefully last a lifetime. And I don't think this is going like in greatest to least order, because the second one I think I touched a little bit upon when I said you miss your family. That's an understatement. You miss your family, you miss your siblings, you miss your dad, you miss your mom, you miss, how things used to be. You miss the old. And this was very, very difficult for me. The first year was the most difficult, I believe, where I would constantly think about how things used to be. But then like my eyes were opened, like the Lord really opened my eyes to the fact that there's newness in the future, and that this is an adventure, and that I have to, be truly glad because there is wonderful joy ahead of me. There is not much to do in Sherman, Texas. In New York City, you can leave at 2 a.m. in the morning from your house and you will find something to do. Something will be open. A bowling alley, something will be open. Though David and I never really went out at 2 in the morning, but there were diners that if we were, hanging out with friends and it was 2 o'clock in the morning and they'll be like, "Oh, I want to grab a bite to eat." And I'll be like, yeah, let's go eat something. We would literally go to a 24-hour diner and sit there and eat. New York City, there is so many options. Well, versus in Texas, or at least the part of Texas that I'm in, it's actually everything's pretty much closed by 10. It's another con. The food, the diversity of food is so much greater in New York City than it is in Texas. But I feel like the pros really do outweigh the cons, because again, I'm here talking about how food is a con, and also not being able to do so much here in Texas. But in reality, because there's not so much to do, you can have a more creative mind to do more of the things that you would do if you were bored. Or David and I sat down one day and started dreaming about we can start a business about this, and we can do this, and we can build a house, and we can do this, and we can buy our ideas started like running, because you actually have to fill your time with something to do, so we become more creative. And then the food thing is actually not really of a con, because we have eaten healthier here because of it. We our lifestyle is so much more active than it was in New York City. So there is a pro to every con. I am hoping that I was clear and that I was able to make sense in what I was saying. Definitely, we want to do more videos like these. We want you guys, we have so many exciting adventures ahead of us, and we want to share that. We want to record it. We want to be able to go back to it and see like what God has done in our lives. There is a verse in the book of Joshua that speaks about how God was instructing the Israelites to memorialize, to create heaps of stones, I believe, and memorialize and write down the things that God has done for them, so that their children and their children's children will be able to see the things that God did in their lives in the past. And for us, that's what kind of YouTube was about, how it came about. But eventually we were like, you know what, this is a good idea. I think it would be great to see the goodness of the Lord and share the goodness of the Lord, of how good he has been to us during this time. So yeah, I hope you guys enjoyed this video. This is my very first video. I am hoping that you enjoyed it, that you liked it. If you did, please give us a thumbs up and subscribe to the channel. So many more videos are up ahead. Subscribe, hit the like button, and share with your friends. If you think someone needs to hear this, if they're going through a lonely season, there is a pro to every con. Have a great day. Bye.